Okay, so once you are done coiling your vessel, you're ready to start preparing it for your designs. So you're definitely going to want to have your sketches out so that you know what kind of designs you plan to put on there. Remember, they should be inspired by Greek pottery, African pottery, Egyptian pottery, or Native American pottery. You should have already done your designs and planned out what parts you are going to impress, which parts are going to be carved in, and which parts you're potentially going to add or use engobe. So you don't have to use all 4 decorating techniques, but you should have planned out which ones you are going to use. So get out those sketches so that you have a plan. If your vessel is not quite the same shape as you had originally planned, it should at least be close, especially if you were using your template. But what we want to do before we actually start adding our designs, you really want your vessel to be as smooth as possible. If you have lumps and bumps and crumbs and then add your designs on top of there, you're going to have so much more cleanup work at the end. So we want to get our surface as smooth and even as possible before we even think about designs. So good tools to do that: smooth kidney, potentially a large ribbon tool, and a damp sponge. Okay, so I'm going to start, and I'm just going to start with a damp sponge. If you are keeping your coils in any area, that's totally fine. They should be smoothed in on the inside, but we want to smooth the coils, and then I'll kind of show you what to do in between the seams. That this probably won't apply to most of you, but some of you may have chosen to keep some of your coils. So I'm going to start with and remember, we want a very damp sponge, so you should squeeze out all the excess water, and we just want it to be damp. So I'm going to start there. Smooth kidney is going to be really helpful in the areas that you have smoothed your coils in. Okay, remember, move it along every which way. Fingers can be good tools. Okay, and then if you have some pretty big lumps and bumps, this one doesn't actually, but if you have some really uneven lumps and bumps, you can use a ribbon tool. You want to make sure that your clay is fairly close to leather hard, or you might accidentally chunk out, but you can just kind of scrape the surface with the ribbon tool, and it'll just take out a little bit of clay to hopefully even out your lumps and bumps so that you have a nice, smooth, even surface. Okay, so you can see right along there, it's looking really nice, really smooth, really even. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep going around there. Be okay if your vessel is not perfectly symmetrical. That is okay. It is hand built. Obviously, you want to try to get it as close as possible. If it's leaning one way or the other, you can kind of move it around. You can pinch. You can utilize pinching and kind of get into the inside and kind of push it and pull it. For this bottom area where the coils have been kept, once you kind of smooth over the actual coil part, you can either take a silicone, the silicone smoothing tools, or maybe even one of the wooden modeling tools, and I would recommend going through that coil so that you can kind of close the seam and make sure that it's looking pretty good there. Okay, so I'm not going to do the whole thing, I'm just going to do part of it. You would obviously want to make sure that you have smoothed your entire vessel, and you really want to wait until your clay is leather hard to do your carvings. Hopefully you know from previous projects that leather hard is going to be the best state of clay to carve into. because otherwise you're gonna get a lot of crumbs and it'll be difficult to work with. Okay, so I'm just gonna really prepare this one side, but you would want to make sure that your entire vessel is smoothed and ready to go, okay? So smoothing kidney, damp sponge, fingers, try to kind of even out some of these coils. So I'm using that wooden modeling tool to kind of get in the crevice and even out those coils. Okay, so the goal is that once you get your design on, you have very minimal smoothing work to do. Okay, so I'm getting in between those coils, evening everything up as much as possible. And then we'll start getting our design on there. Okay, so this area right here, I would say is ready to go. So you can see a really nice smooth surface. There really isn't any lumps or bumps anymore. I've gotten all the crevices between the coils pretty well smoothed, and the surface is ready to go. Okay, so make sure you do this and take your time to do this so that you don't make more work for yourself once you get your carving on there. Okay, so I'm gonna get up here a little bit better. Okay, so this area right here is ready. The rest of it is not yet, but you should be able to see the difference between this area and let's say this area, okay? So we're ready right here. So then once you're ready, again, you're gonna have your design. I would recommend with either one of the silicone smoothing tools, a needle tool, maybe a wood modeling tool, to very softly carve in what you want your design to look like. So I'm not pushing very hard. Okay, so this part of my design is gonna go right here. So I've got my zigzags. You can utilize a ruler. Okay, so then if you do mess up as you're sketching it in there, since it's not very deep, it's very light, you can just smooth it away if you don't like what's happening. Okay. And then my row right here is a series of impressions. So I'm going to use a couple different tools. I'm going to go here. And then I'm going to use a small needle tool. And then small needle tool around there. Okay, so again, remember we really want it to be leather hard before we start carving, otherwise it's gonna just make a mess. Okay, so I'm getting my designs on there, and then I think I'll still go ahead and do my little flower on this part. Okay, this clay is maybe a little soft still. Okay, so I'm just lightly carving everything in. So very lightly carved. If you plan to add any engobe, remember that you can use your finger, or you can use a paintbrush, so depending on where you want that to go. And remember, if you get it in an area that you don't want it, so I kind of got it in a couple spots that I don't want it, you can pretty easily scrape it away. Okay. And then once you know that everything is looking really good, you can go ahead, carve a little bit deeper, make those lines really nice and exact, and make sure that you don't have any crumbs. So remember, you'll probably notice I'm wiping my tool on the sponge every line that I make to get any crumbs out of there. Okay, so you just want to carefully get all of your designs in there. Make sure that it's leather hard. Make sure that your surface is perfectly smooth before you actually start. And then you'll just have some finishing touches whenever you get your carvings in there. Okay, so whenever you're ready to move on to this next part, you can.